everyone, and welcome back to Death Holler. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Death, and joining me as always, my co-host, La Urena, and we are discussing the next movie in the chronology of I Am Legend adaptations, and this one would be The Omega Man from 1971. Tagline, and this is actually a decent one: the last man alive is not alone.
Now, that's a motherfucking tagline right there. That is a tagline if a tagline was ever taglining.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Directed by Boris Sagal, and you can tell when you watch the movie, Boris was notoriously known as a television movie director.
Okay.
So if this looks like a television movie, it's because the guy that directed it that's what he did.
Gonna be real honest with you, it just looked like an old movie to me.
It's got that vibe to it that it could have been on like CBS back in the day or something. I mean, it's got a little bit of it. Written by John William Corrington and Joyce Hooper Corrington, who did the screenplay based upon Richard Matheson's novel.
Okay.
Music by Ron Granier. Again, I can't find a budget and box office for this one, and I don't know why, because I would think of any of them that this one would be easy to find.
And I backtracked you. I went and looked on Google. I was like, okay, it's somewhere. He's just not looking. It's not. There's no fucking numbers. Not even a guesstimate.
And it makes me angry because I would like to see how bad these things bombed or didn't, you know, depending upon what happened. But the only one I officially have is I Am Legend when we get to it.
Well, I would hope that they would have that. I will say this. Let me see. So The Last Man on Earth has 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. Hold on. Let's go to the audience versus... Oh, okay. It has a lower audience score. So 81% on the tomato meter and 69% audience score. I am shockingly more with the tomato meter on that. Let me see. It's got a 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb. I mean, I think that's fair. I think that kind of goes with the audience score. Usually when it shows Google users, it'll say, X percentage of Google users liked this. It does not give it on this one. Now, for Omega Man... 1971. It's got on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 65% on the tomato meter and a 53% audience score, and I'm sure we'll get into what we think. It's got a 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb and no percentage of Google users liking it or not. That's just something random that pops up for me, I swear. So...
Principal players, we have Charlton Heston playing Robert Neville, so it's book appropriate name this time. It actually is the character's name in the book, who's just an American badass. I mean, if Kid Rock sung that song about anybody, it was Charlton Heston in this movie.
We're going. This show's over. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Charlton Heston is obviously known for the Planet of the Apes movies, the originals.
Never heard of them.
Soylent Green. It's people. There's spoiler alert. Ben-Hur, the Ten Commandments. He played Moses in that, folks, which is, I mean, I don't know how people felt about that, but he also played a Mexican in Touch of Evil, so I don't know how people felt about that either.
What'd they do, just slap a mustache on him and give him a corny-ass accent?
He had a mustache, and he was as bronzed as you can be in a black and white movie. Like, his skin is just like, I mean, I think he was just very tan, but it comes across as like, he might have been like, some makeup on or something.
Be honest, Reverend, you're looking at me right now. You're in the presence of a Latina. Does he look more Mexican than me?
Yes.
Yes, I said it's not hard. I know I sound white. I can't help it. My parents didn't teach me Spanish. And I speak like a Californian. That's not my fault. That's just where I live. I'm not going to blame Reverend for sounding like he's from fucking the South. Okay? Just not going to do it. But I'm also very, 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 very pale-skinned. So...
I don't know if I'm trying to see if there's any good images online that you might be able to Google.
Look at if I put my hood on.
Google Touch of Evil, Charlton Heston, and then take a look and see what you think of him. It's
if I put my hood on, do I look like one of the people in this movie? So dumb. Okay, hold
your
on.
your eyes are not quite wide enough
Oh
to
no, they're
be in
not.
this movie.
They're black as night. What is it called? Touch of Evil?
Touch of Evil, Charlton Heston, and then go to the Google Images and you'll see what he looks like in it.
Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, hold on. Let's just go to the images real quick and see what the fuck he does. Okay, he's invited to the carnet.
And even better is the fact that they paired him up with a white woman who is like uber white on the black and white movie, so that it stands out even more. I mean, like, that he's like this dark, Mexican
Tall, dark,
Lothario
handsome, and very, especially in the 50s, very no taboo. You don't put Mexicans with white girls, but technically they didn't because he was a white man. I will say, as a Latina, he is invited to the asada. He's invited to the carne asada. He's invited to the carnitas. He passes.
And he was in a movie called The Awakening, like back in the 80s, which is I think a mummy movie of some kind. I'm not seeing it. I need to watch it at some point. Rosalind Cash plays Lisa, who's that fine vagina in this movie.
And she is naked a lot in this movie.
Yeah, she's a little bit of jungle fever for Charlton Heston in this one.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's an appropriate term anymore, but that's what they used to call it. So, I mean,
I'm sure it's not, but I mean, like, I don't know. I like, do they get mad? There's a whole ass movie called Jungle Fever.
I know. There's a line in this movie we'll get to in the quotes because I had to put it in there. But when he talks about being 160 proof old Anglo-Saxon, I about lost it. I was like, you can't get away with that anymore.
No.
You just can't fucking do that.
Mm-mm. Oh my God. I just Googled. I just Googled jungle fever and it gave me the actual term, which is any of several tropical diseases, but especially malaria. It's also a slang/ethnic slur, so they've changed it. Attraction of a person of non-African descent towards people of African descent. Which is funny because when I think jungle, I don't think of African Americans. I think of certain Asians.
Well,
maybe that's called yellow fever. I'm going to get us in trouble. I'm going to get us canceled.
We're canceled. I probably got us canceled for saying jungle fever, but that's literally what they called it back in the time when this was filmed. I mean, I'm not saying anything that wasn't there. I mean, I think it was a dumb term, but, it is what it is.
Yeah.
She was in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, which is like, that title just goes on for days. Decent movie, though. It's actually very good sci-fi movie for like a cult type movie. And then Tales from the Hood is a fucking good anthology movie. Have you saw that one? You probably haven't.
I have seen bits and pieces of it. My husband loves that film. It's clear that both of you have jungle fever. And I don't hate what I've seen. I just not been inclined to watch it. I am sure there's going to be a season that you're like, this is what we're reviewing. And it's like, okay, well, this is what we're reviewing.
We will be doing an anthology season, and that is one of them. I think it's from part 2, but I believe his name's David Keith, is in Tales from the Hood 2. He plays, or maybe it's the end of part 1. But whenever there's a line that keeps popping up on TikTok, and it's my favorite line ever. It's where it's the final reveal of the movie, and I mean it's spoiler slightly, but he turns around and he tells these people because it's just like all the old Tales from the Crypt movies where they find out they're all dead after they hear the stories of which were how they died honestly throughout the whole thing.
Yeah,
and he turns around to him and he's like, "Welcome to hell, motherfucker!" And then he just starts like laughing. It's like my favorite thing ever.
Okay, I've seen that. That's not a spoiler alert. I've seen that. Oh my God, you and Noah, I swear.
Anthony Zerbe plays Matthias, who is the Ghoul cult leader and Luddite, and he was also I don't know why people don't catch this. They act like, whenever I was going through the trivia, people were like pointing it out. It's like, did you realize he was also the news anchor who was talking about the end of the world? I was like, yeah, how could you not notice that was the same dude? But
okay, well, I didn't, so fuck you.
Well, he was, for anybody who doesn't pay attention to the movie.
Oh my God. God, he's in a lot of movies.
Cool Hand Luke, License to Kill, The Matrix Reloaded, The Dead Zone. He was in quite a bit.
Interesting. Wait, but where did you
Lincoln,
get the term or the word Luddite from?
It's an old term. Like they were a group of people like during the very start of in England specifically, I believe. Whenever it might have been, I don't know if it was prior to or the whenever the industrialization happened, or if it was, but there was at some point where they went around destroying like mechanical things because they believed that people should go back to the old ways of like agriculture and all that. So anybody who's against machinery, they call them a Luddite, just going because that's the name of the people who specifically tried to rise up and destroy the machines back in the day. They might have been right. I don't know. You know, we're getting AI now. Maybe we went too far. Maybe they had the best decision. Who can say?
Okay, but didn't they make? I don't know how you pronounce it. It's those medieval rock throwing. Is it a trebuchet?
Trebuchet.
Okay, trebuchet. Thank you. Is that technically machinery?
It is, and it's like, okay, so you're not cool with guns, but you're fine with trebuchets, which are on the way to guns. Yeah. It's like, come on, Matthias. Like, what the fuck are you doing here?
It's a rock launcher. It may not be a rocket launcher, but we're literally just a syllable, you know?
Yeah, there's some, like, his devotion to, like, machinery it's like Mennonites. It's like, okay, so you're not Amish and you don't believe, but you still don't believe in all the stuff for like, current modern times, but you're cool with cars. Like, what's your cutoff here, pal? Like, what?
It's a typical cult for you. They were definitely a cult. They even had robes.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lincoln Kilpatrick plays Zachary, who's the albino cult second in command in the movie. He's still got some racial hatred going on that Matthias is trying to get rid of. Soylent Green, he was in that with Charlton Heston, Chosen Survivors, and the movie Piranha from back in the 70s.
Okay.
That's definitely a When Bad Animals Go Bad movie that we're going to be covering.
Is it the same as Piranha from like the 2000s?
They were like remakes of that old 70s movie.
That makes sense.
Paul Kozlow plays Dutch, the former medical student and the new human leader. He's kind of like the hippie cult leader of the younger kids. He was in Robot Jocks, Chained Heat 2. Chained Heat movies are so ridiculous. They're those those movies where like women get locked in prison and it's like, and you're following them and they're supposed to be like these hardcore criminals. So you're supposed to not like really be that upset over what's happening, but there's a lot of like pseudo lesbianism and like, them getting beat and all that stuff. And I'm just like, there's guys that must have like specifically wanted that as their fetish or something for those movies to exist.
Yeah.
Because they're a thing. She was in Village of the Damned he was in Village of the Damned from 1976. I would assume he played, since it was like shortly after this, like one of the town elders who are, like the adults who was killed by the kids in that movie. House of Zodiac, Extro 2, The Second Encounter, which those movies are fucking insane. Okay. Eric Launaville plays Richie, Lisa's little bro, who is dead meat and deep six because he was a little too naive, a little too trusting of Matthias and the others.
Yeah.
That dude became a TV director. Like if you go and you look, he has very little like acting to his name, but like he is a ton of directing credentials.
Good for him.
So good on him.
Yeah.
Synopsis: Robert Neville is the last living man in the world. We've heard this before.
Oh, yeah.
After a skirmish between the Chinese and Russians escalated into full-blown war, biological weapons were released that killed most of the world's population instantly. The only known vaccine was obtained too late to help anyone, and only Neville benefited. Now the slowly dying ghouls, the lingering after effects of the contagion, are trying to reform society, and Neville represents everything wrong about the old world. Matthias is sermonizing, Neville is a bit patronizing, and Lisa is getting down with some 160 proof old Anglo-Saxon.
Shut the fuck up. My God.
Oh my God. Other taglines: pray for the last man alive because he's not alone.
I'm not upset.
The world is dead, one survivor, then the others, crawling in darkness, the strangest sect of all, hunting the last man on earth.
And there
I
it
don't.
is.
That one's bad all the way around.
Yeah.
It's broken up. It's
Yeah.
like what the fuck? And you wrote like
It's
a half
contradicting.
sentence. Yeah. Okay. Quotes. First lines in the movie, as Neville wrecks his car. There's never a cop around when you need one.
That's dumb. That's dumb. I hate that so much right now.
Little girl, are you God? And then Lisa, let's find out if he's even a doctor before we go promoting him, okay?
Pretty sure he had Lisa screaming for God later on in the film.
Oh, yeah.
Later on in that day.
Matthias, one creature caught in a place he cannot stir from in the dark alone, outnumbered hundreds to one, nothing to live for but his memories, nothing to live with but his gadgets, his cars, his guns, gimmicks, and yet the whole family can't bring him down from that. And then Zachary was like, honky paradise, brother. And Matthias is like, forget the old ways, brother, all the old hatreds. I put that in there because they do try to make like a little bit out of the whole, like, now that people are like either ghouls or, the last surviving humans, like it's kind of dumb to be, still worried about racism, even though
That's true.
It's going to be a thing. But, and
they're
besides
technically being racist. They're all white as hell, hating this man of color.
That's what I was going to bring up. Zachary is whiter than Charlton Heston.
Yes,
movie, so.
They're all white. Even the black people are white. They did whiteface in this film, and nobody's talking about that.
They did do whiteface. After the family has taken Neville into the little room for questioning, Neville's like, tell me something, would you? Are you fellas really from the Internal Revenue Service?
I loved that.
Hearing the family loudly holding a book-burning revel outside, Neville's like, at it again, I see. What will it be tonight? Museum of Science? Some library? Poor miserable bastards. Matthias, definition of a scientist, a man who understood nothing until there was nothing left to understand. And then Neville responding back, well, so there is a little fight in the forest after all, or a little light in the forest after all. I like the fact that Neville just doesn't give two shits about Matthias. Matthias is like putting Neville up on like this pedestal, which he kind of is in the movie.
Yeah.
He's up above all of them. But like, Neville's just like, you're fucking scum. Like you were just like, he basically, I mean, if you want to like go by common terms or like, modern times, it's almost like he sees Neville as like, or I mean, Matthias is like a guy from CNN, like, I can't remember the names of like the one that like recently got disgraced from CNN.
Oh,
but
God,
like,
there's so many.
Is there one like Stalter or something like that? Like his last name, anyways. Like he's just like, you're scum. It's like, you're preaching like stupid, things or whatever to get like the rabble riled up. Whenever we're just out here, just trying to live our lives, whatever. Dutch. I was a med school senior. Brian Stelter is what I'm thinking of. Dutch. I was a med school senior when they scratched the world. As a matter of fact, I was planning on applying to BioWar Labs for my postdoc, but the next term never came. And Neville's like, now I'm sorry you didn't make it. And Lisa's like, sorry the world didn't make it, even though she doesn't give two shits later on. Whenever he's talking about saving the world, she's like, well, I want you to save Richie. So it's like she's kind of playing both sides.
Yeah.
Like she's trying to make him feel bad because he's like doesn't care. The famous line that I was referencing, Lisa's drawing blood from Neville for a vaccine. Will one bottle be enough? Neville's like, it's genuine, 160 proof, old Anglo-Saxon, baby. I don't know how you get by with lines like that, even back in the 70s, to be honest, but they did it. They did it.
Yeah, they did it. I mean, it's the end of the world. Who is gonna revolt other than the white people? And when I say the white people, I mean the fucking vampires or whatever the hell
ghouls,
they are.
Yeah. Matthias, we waited for you, Neville, so you could see this. The end of all you've done. You see, none of it was real. It was illusion. Your art, your science, it was all a nightmare. And now it's done. Finished, my brethren. Our task is nearly complete. He was the last of those who brought the punishment to us. We have cleansed and purged his world. Now we must build. And Neville responding back, build coffins. That's all you'll need.
I mean,
I like how he gives two shits about these ghouls.
You know what's funny though is that they sat down and legit had a conversation. It was a coherent conversation. I mean, they're able to talk to each other, and yet they can't come to any sort of agreement of, hey, leave me the fuck alone and I'll leave you alone. It's as simple as that. I am gonna die and you guys can rebuild whatever the fuck you want. I won't stop you. Like, I know he just kind of shoots at whatever. I know they kind of established that he's kind of a monster. Could these monsters not just move to a different town?
There might be something in that I don't even know if they intended in their original script, although they might have. Is that not exactly what brought the world to where it's at in this movie to begin with? Is the fact that, like, I mean, the Chinese and Russians, who you would think would be getting along because they're both communist, they apparently couldn't get along either and just destroyed the world. Now, in a small version of it, same thing's happening with Neville and the ghouls. It's like, if you just fuck off, you know, we could. I mean, we got the whole world to live in. I can stay here in my little palace.
Yeah.
You can go down the street a little bit and enjoy whatever the fuck you're going to do, and we'll be kosher, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if they leave, there's nothing for Neville to find.
Exactly.
There's nothing for him to find. They're gone. Like, what happened to the ghouls? Oh, well, they moved to fucking, I don't know, the east side.
And that's the other thing. Why are they staying in the city, which is a huge reminder of, like, the mechanical past that they hate? Go out in the country, like, living amongst the trees and shit. Like, what are you doing?
Stupid head. You can have your little fucking cult affairs out there. I don't know. I just thought the conversation that they had was so sophisticated. It was like two gentlemen in a room arguing back and forth. A lot of one-liners was happening. But, like, it's like there's definitely reason, but neither one of them want to be reasonable, if you catch my drift. And
I think you're hitting on something that's kind of interesting about this. Even if they didn't intend it, it's almost like a microcosm of, like, the world in general.
Yeah.
It's like, we could get along if we just talk this over, but no, let's shoot the fuck out of each other and, you know, and go that route with it instead of actually, you know, agreeing to disagree or whatever we want to do with this.
Well, look at it this way. I have a really good analogy for how this is working. They were looking, the thing about The Last Man on Earth is they said that Vincent Price wasn't good at bringing forth the all-American male. And I guess we could definitely say Charlton Heston did. He's got that typical all-American man kind of look, but he represented America in more ways than just being the typical American male. He represented America fucking in other people's affairs. And the other people having their affairs don't take kindly to that, and now they're just like, fine, we're going to fucking fuck with you now.
Yeah, he goes down the streets. I mean, you can't get more American than this, really. I mean, and it's commentary. He goes down the street in a Ford Mustang, at just blazing down the road. Like, I mean, not giving two shits, with a submachine gun, just taking pot shots at these fuckers as like and they're
not even sure that it is them, because we find out that it's regular people he's shooting at.
And it could be. And I mean, you want to take this a little bit step further on if you want to take this analogy, although I still don't think they meant this in this movie. We've got somebody with sophisticated United States, you know, guns and, you know, military weaponry against people with fucking rocks. Now, does that sound like anything that's happened in the last 20 years? Middle East, maybe?
No. Don't know what you're talking about. Look, the point is, America, stay out of people's fucking affairs. And they won't. I mean, I bet you if he stopped fucking with them, they might stop fucking with him. I don't know. It depends on what kind of. He is only one man. I could see them wanting to be like, let's just fucking take him out. Like, I don't want him to be a threat at all. Like, I can't necessarily blame them, and he is the minority.
And I mean, and I can't blame Zachary or whatever for always telling Matthias, it's like, one gun. That's all you need. Just one shot, and he's out.
Like, we can end this. Yeah, it's pretty funny, actually.
I mean, it's an interesting commentary. It really is. Whenever you're watching it and you think on these levels, although it's a B level movie in a lot of senses, so people don't give it that like scrutiny. But there is something there. I mean, because he is so blatantly American in this movie.
Oh, like, yeah. I mean, get some marionettes. Okay, this is just like a part 2 of Team America World Police.
It is. I mean, he's up, and that scope that he has, like that big infrared scope that he's got on his big like sniper
That's
rifle,
hella
and he's
funny.
taking. It's. I mean, and he's so like out there and like confident in himself, just like they always claim Americans are when we go overseas. Like you can't get more American than he is in this movie. Like you can't. Neville hallucinates about a dozen payphones ringing simultaneously around him. There is no phone ringing, damn it. The bell stopped and he gets a grip on himself. There is no phone. That's the one sign in this movie that better than, well, I think Will Smith does it slightly better with the mannequins, but that's like the sign in this movie where he's losing his sanity a little bit.
Yeah.
Neville talking to a moldy corpse in a car dealership. How much for a trade-in on my Ford? Oh, really? Thanks a lot, you cheating bastard. I love that where he's talking to a dead body, for God's sake. You know,
I mean, that's basically what salespeople are. I mean, they're just a body there, you know? They're just there to get beat up and yelled at and hopefully make a decent commission to bring some food to the table.
That scene is kind of similar though to a scene in The Last Man on Earth, because whenever they trash Robert Morgan's car, he does trade up to a sportier version. So I mean, there's a little bit of link there in that sense. Visually, the ghouls in this, I like the look of them. I do like that albino, like they got the grayed out eyes and the whitish looking skin. I mean, it's simple, but it works for what they're trying to get across. I mean, they even don't they have like patches of rawness to their skin too?
Yeah, they have chunks of skin, chunks of skin missing, basically.
And The Simpsons did a version of this actually called
so
the Homega Man, I think is what it is. Like it's Homer and like he goes drinking I think the night that the bombs fall, and like Moe's bar or something, it's filled with asbestos or something that protects him. And like when he comes home, like the rest of the world is those ghouls because, you know, they've all been exposed and like Moe's one of them and they're trying to kill him. And like, it's just him like with a shotgun, like taking them down left and right, just like Charlton Heston was in this movie. It's pretty good actually.
Oh my God. The Simpsons, they're so good.
It's in the Treehouse of Horror. I can't remember which version, but when you go watch it next time, look out for that episode because it's actually a pretty good homage to this movie.
Yeah.
Sideshow Male, I think, is one of them. They're like that one of the albino ghouls, and he's all dramatic like he always is, kind of like Matthias is in this movie. Talking about how Homer is has to be put down because he represents everything bad about society and all that stuff. It's pretty good. Visually though, other than that, like they don't really do a whole lot otherwise in this movie. I mean, like the scenes of people dying are pretty, I mean, they almost border on cheesy at times because they're just like, and then
and then they just fall over, which is funny because that's how what's his name dies in a helicopter. They crash, so not only does he technically, because they die they said dying within minutes. No, they die within seconds on screen. But
in seconds, yeah.
So they go down. The helicopter crash didn't kill him, but I'm sure it took him a while to come back to reality, if you will. But I don't know if he was a vampire at that point or if he was like, if I take this vaccine, I won't become a vampire.
They don't explain that, and that's the only, and I like your headcanon on that better than what they show in the movie, because when I watched it, I was like, okay, so he was dying in that helicopter just like the pilot was, and because he had the same, gasping for air, whatever they were doing. They crash. He's alive, so I mean, he's covered in blood, but he's alive. So I mean, I guess he was on his way to becoming one of the ghouls at that point, but then he grabs the experimental vaccine and injects himself, and I guess that keeps him from going into full-on ghoul mode at that point.
So, I don't know. That wasn't very well explained, but I did think immediately when I saw them getting in that helicopter, I was like, you're going to get in a helicopter when you have no idea whether your pilot is going to just, like, start choking, and then his pilot starts choking, and I'm like, well, yeah. Like, even I saw that coming, and I have never seen this movie.
I will say this: those scenes that they filmed of Los Angeles, or what I think the LA is where they filmed this in, of the streets, it gives that a post-apocalyptic vibe heavy at the beginning of this movie. Like, I mean, the abandoned streets, like the cars all like crashed around the place. That one little scene where he goes in the dealership to get a new car and like the dead body in the corner. That does a pretty good job of selling the setting, or at least of the movie, even if later on they don't really show much of it anymore, because outside of whenever he goes inside the department store with all the mannequins and sees that one ghoul like fall over dead, which goes to what you were saying about how they're dying anyways. And outside of that, the rest of the movie just is between it's a lot of scenes with him at his place, or it's Matthias, just outside tearing shit up. So that establishing shot at the beginning is the only thing that really sells the apocalyptic feel of it in this movie.
I felt like, well, because people were dying so quickly, it's not like people were rushing to the stores to get food or anything like that. So I think that it kind of sells the whole. Oh, hold on one second. Oh, my child was walking in. Okay, guess I don't need me. Like when they're walking through the pharmacy. And and obviously he's in the department store. Nothing's like really knocked over or broken down, but it does. I think that they did a really good job of making it look empty still. Even though there was still clothing available and stuff like that, it still felt. I don't know. It just still felt like a wasteland in its way. And a little insider secret from a Californian: Los Angeles still looks like that. Like they didn't have to do anything to make it. All they had to do was clear the people, because when you're coming into the city off of I-5, you drive through this big. It's called the Grapevine, and it's like a bunch of valleys, or a big valley you're driving through with hills, rolling hills, and everything. So you're driving through a bunch of essentially farmland, and then you start coming into the city, and it just. Aside from cars, it looks desolate. So.
Probably more so now since everybody got the fuck out of there after the 2020 nonsense happened. But.
I mean. And you got the homeless, so you got zombies.
You got Matthias amongst the, out there on the street.
And even better, the last time we were out there, it was not, I wouldn't say the last time, but like we were there right after COVID. They were letting people go to Disneyland, I think. And it was still with the mask. Everyone had to wear a mask everywhere. And if you weren't one in your car, oh no, buddy, don't you dare. But when we were out there just towards the exiting of COVID, barely the exiting, so people were still on edge, we had heard about homeless taking over a park, and they basically created a living situation of sorts, but you had to be approved to get into it. So it's almost like you had to be a higher level of homeless person. I don't know if they're like no drugs or whatnot. I don't know if that was one of the requirements, but they basically had their own HOA, if you will, homeless association.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We can't let those homeless in because they don't crap on the right doorsteps.
I guess so. I don't know what it is. Like it's like they're trying to be, and like, look at, do you blame them at this point as hard as it is in California? But they're basically segregating themselves from the poorer of the poor. It's like a middle class of poor people. Like, not even a poor people, a middle class of homeless people. There we go. The homeless have their own classes now. And
that's just wonderful.
I hate to say it, but it just feels like it's just a natural human thing to have classes, classification.
You would think that the destitute would be like in this movie with a cult. They'd all like get together and they just all be one. But like, no, they even have to have classes within in the lowest class. Or whatever.
I'm gonna find an article on it because we were listening to it on, not the news so much, but like I guess if wherever you're gonna get real information, not the mainstream media. And we're like, me and my husband were just looking at each other like, this is not real. Like, this can't be a thing. And like, do like normal kids to get to go play at that park now too, or is that just for the homeless?
Would normal people want to go to that park? That's the question.
I'm sure it's in a poor neighborhood, so I'm pretty sure kids did anyways, you know? There's still going to be the kids that want to play basketball and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I can only imagine the poor in that neighborhood are like, at least we're not those guys, you know? It's like...
It's unbelievable. Anyways, where were we?
We always going to the visuals. Is there anything else you want to say about the visuals? I mean, it's got a dated look, but I mean, there's something charming about it. It's like, you know, it's got that vibe like that it happened in another era entirely, which it did.
Yeah. Visually, I mean, it was kind of cool to see things in color. So I'll give it that. There wasn't anything outstanding. I do think the ghouls looked pretty good, you know, in terms of they did a good job, especially with, you can go so wrong with white makeup, especially putting white makeup on a actual person of color.
Yeah.
So, and then the contacts, which I heard back in the day were extremely painful. This was before they came up with, I'm sure those were glass.
Yeah, they weren't soft lenses at all. They were like hard glass lenses in most cases.
I heard they were extremely uncomfortable, so kudos to the actors for putting up with that. But overall, they did pretty decent, you know. Cheesy decent, but decent, I should say.
The strangest one was seeing Lisa when she made her ultra quick conversion over to be one of them. Her afro, I mean, which I know Zachary kind of had that too, but like hers was even more defined. Like it just looked so weird whenever it turned stark white.
Yeah, well, the afro, I hate to say, it looks like they just put baby powder in their afro to turn it white.
Yeah. That's what they pretty much did.
Yeah.
I was going to say this, getting into the story a little bit. There are people who have made links in this movie. Not only, I mean, now, first of all, I don't know if you knew this. This is a little bit of trivia. This is the first movie to feature an interracial kiss. I don't know if you were aware of that.
Shit, I didn't know that, but I was wondering.
Now, it had been done on television prior to this in Star Trek between, Uhura and, Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
But this was the first movie to actually have an interracial kiss.
Yeah.
Which was interesting for its time. There was a lot of people that said that the Matthias cult in this movie was kind of a cultural response to the Manson's family back in the day. Because, I mean, they even say the family, which is, reference, is very close to the Manson family part of it. So, it has a little bit of that baked into it, which I guess was like a cultural fear back around this time, after was her name Shannon Tate or whatever was killed.
Sharon
by the
Tate,
Manson, Sharon Tate, yeah, by the Manson family. Like people were like, okay, or how prevalent are these cults? Like, can Charles Manson, can there be others out there like him? So
yeah.
Matthias was kind of a stand-in for Charles Manson.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. I think that's a really good way to draw fear from people of these times.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it from their point of view, I mean, it was way more current than it is now. I mean, we look at Charles Manson, and he's kind of like laughable with, not to what he did.
No,
but But when you see later on, whenever, like, from when we grew up, like when all the stuff that came out of prison from him, he just sounded like you'd watch him and he's like, who the fuck would ever believe this guy? He sounded like a crazy, like, homeless person on the side of the street in Los Angeles.
Well, this is back when drugs were really making people just think that they were experiencing something. I feel like maybe he was loading them with drugs too.
Well, it was the drug thing, but also he was supposed to be just like Matthias in this movie, very eloquent. Like he could, like he was a very good speaker. Like he was very smart, intelligent back in the day. I don't know what happened to him whenever he was in prison because he sounded like just a nut job.
Or did people think that he was speaking coherently and that he was intelligent? Because if anything,
maybe.
Okay, because when you're on drugs, and I've not been on drugs, so don't get mad at me if you've been a person that's tried drugs before. I'm not here to fucking judge you if you're not doing that anymore, but maybe you have a real experience. But from the outside looking in, I'm just wondering, is it possible that, he was saying things that were triggering amazing visions? Because people say they see the neatest shit. Some people also say they see some horrific shit when they're on drugs. And is he just feeding their acid dreams and they're just so in awe by this person? You know?
I'm not going to discount that because, I mean, I think even back in the day, he was talking about Aquarius and like all this other stupid shit. And like, I'm sure if you were on drugs, you were like, man, I feel like closer to God right now with all the, with this going on.
It's a whole euphoric thing. I hear about it all the time. I have not been interested in trying any heavy drugs. The most I've tried is a weed gummy. Ooh, we got a badass over here, And I can't even handle those at one time. If I'm taking it, I better be going to sleep within 10 minutes because I can't.
Hey, those are, according to Totally Killer, those are a lot stronger than the weed back in the 70s now.
That is true.
I mean,
that I have heard
or
that.
in the 80s at least. The other thing they had going on in this movie that I find really interesting is the way they set up the apocalypse is like a biological warfare between China and Russia. Now, it's kind of weird. We're back in the situation where it's not those two fighting each other. It's actually those two joining up. That's the biggest fear, which has always been America's fear, that the communists would join together. And even back in, especially in the 70s with, not even Vietnam. I mean, like this was Vietnam era. So they were worried about that too. But like, I'm trying to think of the other, I don't know. I'm blanking on it. There's another Asian country that they had just got through fighting or whatever wars in for like years before this in the 50s. And so like they were always worried about
Korea.
Korea. Yeah. So the Korean War, like so this is still playing on all that stuff. Like, and I don't know if you remember as a kid in the 80s, but like that fear heightened to like the nth degree in the 80s. Like if that moment, a lot of younger folks don't realize this, so let me step back in the Wayback Machine and preach from, my soapbox here as an old man. But like whenever Reagan made that, decree for them to tear down the wall, like, I mean, that doesn't seem like much these days. That was a huge moment.
Oh, yeah,
like,
definitely.
I mean,
are you talking about Berlin?
The Berlin Wall and all that stuff. I mean, it was... Because, I mean, they were still telling us, not that I ever believed that this was ever doing anything, even as a kid, but they were still instructing us to get on a school desk in the event that a nuke would be dropped by the Russians, basically, as children.
That reminds me of I don't know why I instantly thought of the song Crawl Out Through the Fallout. Have you heard it?
Yes.
Why does that song exist? That should be a song that was made for the video game Fallout, but it wasn't. It was made in the 50s.
Right after they Oppenheimer, invented the nuke, like very much like nuclear fears came into effect, and this movie goes the other route and doesn't make it a nuclear apocalypse, but it does make it like the battle with the communists and all that. So. I mean, you put yourself back in the day, that was another fear they were, kind of playing on in this movie quite a bit. Yeah.
Which that's a good fear to play on. I'm sorry, but it is. Right now, just us alone, recording right now, if we knew that China and Russia had come together and were coming after us, we'd be like, okay, so do we just fucking take our shoes off and let the Chinese in? Because, I mean... Our president is, not to get political on this podcast, but our president is literally just leaving our military equipment in other countries for them to take.
Yeah, the one benefit that we have, and we don't have, and they're not like Matthias in these other countries. They're not like, well, brother, we better not take this because that makes us like the oppressors. No, they're like, no, let's take this and fucking rock the world with it, and they are. I mean, they're doing it.
We would be horrified, and we probably should be more scared but I think we just, at this point, we're just so fucking numbed.
Like I said, we are a generation that was raised and literally to be taught to get under a desk because of nukes dropping. So
it's not going to work.
Well, I know like the younger kids, I don't know what they're thinking, but I'm saying like for us, like if we're numb, it's because of that. It's like, okay, we've been taught that we're going to die because of some kind of thing for, from the moment we were born. Like, I guess we're waiting on it to happen at this point. I don't know.
I'm sorry, but I'm stuck on this now. Crawl out through the fallout, hiding under a desk. Okay, he literally says, when your white count's getting higher, hurry, don't delay. I'll hold you close and kiss those radiation burns away. What the fuck? What the hell? What else does he say? Oh, yeah. If you cannot find the way, just listen for my song. I'll love you all your life, although that may not be too long.
You have two responses whenever you're thinking about the ultimate destruction of the planet. You can either curl up in a ball and cry about it, or you can make dark humor.
Yeah, dark humor
what he
is
chose to do.
what it's going to be. It's going to be dark humor for me. Yeah. I wonder if my insulin will still be active if it gets attacked by radiation, you know? I wonder if my pancreas will start working.
Spoiling.
Yeah. Will my pancreas just start working? Tell me it's going to just start working. I'd like to not have to worry about giving myself injections, you know?
I'm trying to think of anything else story-wise in this movie. There's Christ elements in this movie.
Wait, there's Charlton what? Christ elements?
Blatant Christ elements. He blatantly played into them in this movie.
Okay.
He literally gives his blood to others to save them.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Body in the blood.
And remember how he dies in this movie. Spoiler for anybody who's not seen it. He's basically crucified in the fountain in front of his place.
Mm-hmm.
Very Christ-like. And Charlton Heston deliberately leaned into that. So,
okay. I was like, how so? And then now that you said that, I'm like, oh, yeah, the body in the blood.
Charlton Heston, you got to remember, even back in the day, he died probably before like some of the youngest, people who are listening to this, if we do have that young, heard about him. But he was very into like the NRA. Like he was like the head of it at one point, or at least the figurehead of it. Whenever we were in like high school, college era, and even back in this time, he was very pro Second Amendment. He was very Christian, based this and that. So that's the reason he did movies like the Ten Commandments. So he really wanted those elements in this movie. So it's not like he leaned away from them.
Oh my God.
Acting, he is overacting to the nth degree in this movie.
Yeah.
The guy who's playing Matthias he's delivering these very like stilted, well, I don't know what you say stilted. They're very like out there, like big long dialogues every time he talks. But I feel like he does a pretty good job of delivering them like to where they're not too overblown.
Mm-hmm.
But Charlton Heston is out there. Like he is just out.
He's giving it to us.
And Lisa.
Yes, that is yes, Lisa too.
What do you think about her? I feel like she's kind of understated in this movie. Like and it's good because they could have went that whole like blaxploitation angle with her, the way she looked in this movie, especially of where she was like very sassy black woman, and she didn't do that. She didn't lean into it as hard as she could have.
Yeah, Noah was telling me, she's a black woman, and I wasn't convinced at first. I was like, she looks Puerto Rican at darkest to me, but she herself said that she absolutely refused to be the typical black woman that you saw in the movies at this time. So that was all her, and good for her for standing her ground, because I feel like she was unfortunately in a time era where women of color didn't get to speak their mind like that. Not in America anyways, maybe in other places where films were being made, but in America it was like, nope, we don't probably even want you in our films, not for anything major, which is fucking ridiculous. I thought she was pretty good, but I feel like you're right. They did underutilize her because despite being, maybe she wasn't a typical black sassy woman in the film, but she was just a typical sex, toy in the film.
She was basically there to be his I don't even know if you say lust interest more than anything. And they built a little bit on her with that relationship with her and her brother, but then like how quickly she turns toward the end of the movie, like we don't even get resolution from that because she doesn't even really respond to Richie's death because she's already turned over to a ghoul at that point.
Yeah.
Whenever he's dead,
he's dead, but you could tell at some point he was he's coming back to life.
Yeah,
because he turned normal. They took the powder out of his hair,
Yeah, and Richie, which the one we talked about going on to be a director, kudos to him because he didn't like lean into any really black stereotypes either as far as a character. He was just an average kid, a little naive. He was like, and just like you pointed out, he literally was a stand-in for what you just said. He was like, why do you all have to fight? Like, you can cure them of their disease. Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And then Charlton Heston kind of a, you know, a little bit symbolic, was just like, fuck them. I ain't going to heal those fucking freaks, you know. It's
because
like,
fuck them, that's why.
That's a sad comment on like humankind, but it happens.
Now, I was losing a little bit of interest in this film by the time we were getting to the point where the kid kind of was turning back to normal.
Yeah. That's a big criticism of these movies. Now they said it. I've read this criticism about Last Man on Earth. I don't feel like it was that bad in that movie. Actually, I enjoyed it most of the way through. This one slows down during that point, and it's just like, oh, come on now, come on. You know, it's like,
I need a refresh or a recap of what happened between the kid, Lisa turning, and that's it. Like, I must have missed that, or I just didn't.
It's funny. They spend so much time in the domestic love scenes between, you know, Neville and Lisa in this, you know, and towards like the back half of this movie, and it kind of drags a little bit. But then whenever it starts to punch it up for the final like confrontation, it's like blink and you'll miss it type shit.
Okay, which I did. I blinked, so I missed what happened. What happened to the kid? How did he end up dying?
Richie goes to the state courtroom building, or the LA courtroom building where Matthias is held up. He comes to him and says, "Listen, Neville can heal you. You don't have to live like this. Can we work something out?" And Matthias basically says, "You represent everything that's wrong with the world, just like he does, and we're proud to be like, you know, what we are now. And we're not going to go back." And he declares the judgment of death on him from his position. Okay. And there's a quick scene of like Richie with like blood coming out of his mouth.
Yes,
like,
I saw that.
You know, it doesn't really show how he was killed. And then the next thing that you see is them on their way to Neville's to take him out. And there's a scene of Lisa, who has went off presumably just to shop for her and Neville at night whenever he kind of warned her not to. And she has instantly converted. Like there's been like no like hints, you know, even like, you know, because with Richie, it was a slow turn. It was like, you know, his skin was getting the albinism, and it was like his eyes were turning, but he wasn't quite there. No, she's just like, you know, she's in an instant.
And boom goes the dynamite.
Yep. And then she joins the cult because I guess if you become one of the ghouls, that instantly makes you one of them. I don't know how that works either.
One of us.
Weebo wobble. And then at the end of the movie, she helps. She basically helps them get inside of Neville's complex, and at the last minute when she could have helped him out, he was trying to get her to leave with him. He works his way out of that situation, killing Zachary in the process. Before he can get away, she kind of turns on him because Matthias kind of plays into his, you know, Charlie Manson part of it, you know, convincing her that she needs to, you know, kind of help them. And then Neville gets harpooned basically. Yeah. Which goes back to what you said again. He doesn't like guns, but a harpoon gun, that's or a spear or whatever is fine. Okay. Matthias, it's all great, you know, shades of the same thing, but whatever you want to argue on that. I bet you as soon as
like the last human is gone, which is Neville, I bet you like Matthias is like, okay, let's take his guns. Like, no, you said no. I bet you they don't even eat butter.
They've probably got some kind of weird dietary thing. It's like we can't have this because it represents the old times, like processed canned foods or something. Yeah. And then music wise, like the music, there's some odd choices in this movie because whenever Neville is like getting ready to make love to Lisa, it gets very almost like 70s porn based or whatever. Got that? And there's a scene in the movie too where he's like, it's supposed to be a dramatic scene, but the music they cut in is more like this weird like Carousel? 70s like it's like love music, but it's like, you know, mixed with like action music, and it's like that's not what this scene is trying to convey.
Are you talking about the courthouse scene where he was talking to what's his name?
Matthias and Neville are kind of like talking to each other. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's weird music. It sounds like a mixture of jazz mixed with carousel music.
Yeah, yeah. And at the beginning of it, and I've got that in the trivia, there was supposed to be another song that it was a Frank Sinatra song that he was supposed to be singing while he was in his Ford. They couldn't get the rights to it, so they put like some kind of breezy jazz version of like some other song on top of it, which doesn't really like fit that well.
I'm gonna be real honest with you. I liked the jazz 8-track he was using. I did. It did not bother me. I thought it suited the times. It was a little calming. It was funny because it's soothing and relaxing. He's just having a drive down the fucking into the city, and then all of a sudden, boom! He's just fucking shooting at some silhouette in the window, and I'm like, hell yeah! Like
the selling point of this movie is fucking Charlton Heston. Like, yeah. I appreciate Matthias. I love some. I mean, even though they're long-winded, some of his lines are just. I mean, the way he says them and everything else is just so good. But like Charlton Heston being just so out there, like as the way he is in this movie, that's where you watch this movie for. You don't watch it for like trying to get some kind of inner meaning on anything or even like The Last Man on Earth where it's got that lonely apocalypse. No, you're watching Charlton Heston just chew through the scenery like left and right in this movie. Like that scene where he goes in the movie theater and he's watching for like the umpteenth time some kind of footage from Woodstock that was out there that had been filmed. You know that Charlton Heston in real life, I mean, he was 50-something years old in this movie. You know that he didn't give two shits about Woodstock.
Sorry, my daughter walked in. He didn't give two shits about Woodstock. I mean, I feel like in that time era that he was in, excuse me, let me backtrack. Not the time era he was in, but what he was going through. Is he supposed to give two shits?
I just think it's like a funny little scene, like seeing him interact, because, I mean, he was as anti-Woodstock as a person could be. I mean, you talk about somebody who was all about like fighting in Vietnam and all that. I mean, Charlton Heston was the epitome of like a Republican back in that time period.
That's true. But now hear me out on this though. You got to get your entertainment any way you can. So he's going to be open to a lot more things. Think of it this way. I was thinking of him listening to that fucking cheesy ass jazz 8-track, but like, then I was thinking, he's going to run out of music. What else exists out there? Fucking polka music? He's going to start listening to fucking polka music and probably not a fan of it. But I'm going to start listening to a bunch of different things so I'm not listening to the same shit over and over, even though mine's and your Spotify list probably is the same music we've been listening to since high school.
That's true. Then there's some scene where he's got that big camera that he's like watching the outside with, but like one of them is centered directly on him. And like Lisa even makes a comment on it. She's like, "Do you like looking at yourself?" And he's like, "Best looking guy around," or something like that. He makes a comment like that. It's like, man, you're just. I mean, like he's all like just all man in this movie. Like he doesn't like. I mean, he doesn't bow down to anybody in this film. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of fun to watch.
Not even a little bit. Do you think that when Star Wars came out, I think the first one came out late 70s, like 77. And I don't think that we had, what's his name in there, Emperor Palpatine yet. But do you think Palpatine came from the look of these creatures?
Now, George stole from a lot of stuff, so it wouldn't surprise me if he stole the look of Palpatine from like the black hooded creatures.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he does, and he even has like, I mean, isn't his skin like very white and stuff, just like these monsters too?
Pale skin, pale eyes.
Yeah, he does. He has the eyes kind of like that, but although his is like yellowish looking, I think, in the movies. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, because he did take a lot from like different sources. So, I mean, he might have watched this and that stood out to him. It's like, that's a cool look for something. I want to use that in my movie.
Yeah, I'm thinking he did. Because when I saw them, I was like, oh, well, at least, I cannot word right now. Specifically Matthias. I was like, Palpatine.
That's a good call. I didn't even think about that. But I
Now,
wasn't thinking about Star Wars watching this either. So
back to the topic of music, though. Aside from me liking that horrible jazz music, again, taking his leisurely stroll, I thought the music was god awful in this. It did a lot of it did not match what was going on in the scene. It was very Japanese.
It's anti. It's actually anti the mood of the movie
Mm-hmm.
whenever it's been played.
Yeah, there was actually some good action scenes too, and it was actually thrown off by the music, which is terrible.
Yeah, the action scenes were like that very terrible, like 70s, like TV action movie, like riff or whatever if they were going on, and I'm just like, that kind of hurts. If you rescored this movie, I think you can make it even better than what it is.
Oh
honestly.
yeah, I think so. I agree with you on that one.
Not to say that you couldn't improve upon other parts of the movie,
No.
but like, I mean, the music would definitely, if you just left what was there, rescored it, punched it up in that way, I think it would add a lot to this movie.
I feel like there's always things that we're like, oh, if we change this about a movie, we change that. No, I think you're right. What if we didn't change anything other than the music? It could dramatically change a lot of fucking films.
Well, even like that, I mean, it would for sure, because music is, I mean, people don't give it credit for what it adds to a movie. You watch like The Lord of the Rings. I mean, if you're into those movies, that music from Howard Shore is like, it's chef's kiss. Like it's that stirring, like, orchestral, grand epic music or whatever. The movie wouldn't be half as good as what it is without that going on.
Yeah.
And like this movie, if you had a good score behind those scenes where the people are dying, even though it looks cheesy as is, it would make those scenes actually be more effective than what they are currently.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as like conveying like how deadly this virus was that kind of swept over the planet after the two were fighting each other.
Thinking, I mean, yeah, because the way I felt about this in general, just watching it again for the first time, was that this virus doesn't seem that scary. I don't want to turn to one of those people, but is that really the worst way to live?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not. I mean, that's, I saw somebody make the comment, try and read some others' reviews to kind of get some like ideas of what other people thought about this. And some guy pointed this out. I guess it's not a invalid criticism. Says that most post-apocalyptic movies are libertarian dreams. Because you've always got like the scene of the guy, or whoever the protagonist is, just like in this one in particular, driving down the road in like a premium car, got the best weaponry you can get. He's just living his best life because the government's off his back.
Yeah.
He don't have to worry about other people like getting in his shit anymore. It's just like him against the world, and it's like,
literally.
I was like, I want to hate that comment because I lean libertarian, but I'm like, you're not wrong. It's like, it really is one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's kind of what libertarians want. It's just to be left the fuck alone. And, if they want to go out and, cruise down the city, at 80 plus miles per hour in a flashy sports car, they can do it. And there's no cop going to pull them over, in this reality.
But okay, but at the same time, okay, and it sounds like I'm defending the dark side over here, but like not Matthias, what's his name? Why can't I remember our main character's name?
Neville,
Robert
Neville.
You. I wouldn't want to be him. I wouldn't want to be alone.
You're supposed to want to be him.
Okay.
Like, I mean, even though they paint him as like this big macho man, good with the ladies and all that in this movie, I don't think you're supposed to. The way that they paint this movie, you're supposed to actually side with a kid, that med student kid at the end of the movie. He's the one that's actually starting a new reality, which is funny because he is as close to Woodstock in this movie as any of the characters are. And he represents like what the new generation is trying to accomplish, which is a world free of both of those idiots that are fighting, Matthias and Neville. They're just wanting to live and not have to deal with anything. And so that's the person you're supposed to side with, is him, not Neville.
Yeah. Okay. Now, based on what we talked about earlier, like Neville, why aren't you going out to the country to have your cult? Not Neville, Matthias. Neville, why aren't you moving out to the country so you don't have to deal with what's happening in the city? Well, this is where I live. This is where I always lived. This is my land.
He's like, this was my house.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to get it. And it's just like, and again, that goes back to that cop, that person. It's just like, that's what a libertarian would say. It's like, this is my fucking property. Get the fuck out of here.
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn.
And then that goes back to being Matthias's fault because every night they kept going and fucking with him.
Yep.
And this guy's literally just doing his thing. And it's like, okay, you're going to fuck with me at night. I'm going to fuck with you during the day. These are just neighbors that cannot come to an agreement.
Which does go back to the original novel in the sense that this is the Ben character in this movie. I mean, Matthias is the character that just has it out for Neville and will not leave him alone,
Yeah.
But in this one, it's harder to, just like you said, it's harder to give him the benefit of the doubt. Ben is just a mindless ghoul who knows nothing other than, I remember Robert Morgan, I want to kill him, for whatever reason. It's like in his diseased brain. Matthias is very eloquent. He's very intelligent. He's just like, dude, stop. Just go somewhere else. I mean, you can start up your funky Manson level cult anywhere. Just get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, and especially if there's no one around you for miles. And if a human comes across your domain, then you can take that person if you want to into your cult.
Yeah. Simple.
That's their fault. They came, they fucked with your grass. That's all you now. Ain't nobody gonna stop you. However, quit going to other people's lawns and fucking with them.
And again, it makes no sense why he would be in the city anyways, because they hate everything that the city represents, the old civilization. Why not live out in the woods like a bunch of hippies? I mean, that's what you want to do.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
Moving on to trivia for this movie, the writers came up with the idea to make Neville's love interest an African-American woman, even though an interracial relationship was still considered controversial in the 70s. The writers figured that in a world where humanity had almost become extinct, the few survivors would not care about any of that shit anymore. So, pretty on point, I think. And there's actually a deleted scene where she reveals that she was actually pregnant with his kid.
Oh, damn. Okay. I just want to say something on that topic. It's funny how back in the day we hated that we felt like it was white people that were against that. And for the most part, I guess it was, if one person is saying it, it must be right. So we all have to be against it, even though you knew there was a ton of fucking, white people that had jungle fever or whatever. Okay. That's totally fine. But nowadays, as a person who's married to a white person, it feels like it's more the cultures that are against getting with a person that is not of color, a white person. So it's went the opposite. Mm-hmm.
They're segregating in all of the senses, even including like, it's like, why are you with this person sexually? It's like, I mean, now if they identify as 3 or 4 different genders and in addition to being, whatever they are, then that's acceptable. But if they're just, black guy, white woman, or white guy and black woman, and don't identify with any kind of weird, strange thing, then you all shouldn't probably associate with each other because one's oppressed and one isn't. And you should probably go back to the one that's not got this hierarchical power over the other one. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. I don't know if the algorithm is algorithming on my TikTok, but I get a lot of videos, and it's not of Latinas in particular. In fact, I don't know. I feel like on my TikTok page, it's the rise of the white man taking all of the beautiful women of color, every color you can imagine, Asian, brown, black, all over the board, okay? The white man is taking all of the beautiful women, and it's like, I think the beautiful women are sick of you. Like, not of the white men. Think they're just like, we're sick of our own brand because y'all are oppressive motherfuckers. I'm sorry. That's how it is. I've never been more oppressed by anyone other than my own race of people. So I think it's kind of funny that, in the 70s, this was so controversial. I'm glad they approached it because one, not. And I think that's a good way of getting out of that kind of controversy, honestly, is like, well, in the movies, it's acceptable. That means, I mean, remember when smoking was acceptable all over the place in movies? It's almost like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's crazy going back and watching some of these older movies, especially. I feel like it reached its peak in the 80s, like just one cigarette after the other. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, like they never stop smoking. And it's like, okay, this is, I don't know. I think back to this scene from The Shining where Jack Nicholson, I mean, it's a behind the scenes thing. He's brushing his teeth, and I mean, he puts way more effort in, and my dentist probably wishes I did what he's doing in the scene. I mean, he's like just going to town and like, you know, really getting in there and scrubbing his, you know, teeth and all that, because he's getting ready to have a scene where he's got to kiss Shelley Duvall or whatever her name is in that.
Wow.
And then he just lights up a cigarette right after that. And I'm like, why even bother brushing your teeth?
Reverend, it's okay. They were menthols.
And of course, in that same movie, she has that scene where she's got the ash that you're just sitting there. You've got more anxiety about it than you do about the ghost. It's like, how the fuck is she kept that thing from just like falling all over the place? I like the internet memes on that too, because they've made that ash like
super long,
even go outside the frame.
Yeah,
now it just looks ridiculous.
Oh my god.
But yeah, you think, and I mean, if anybody's ever been around somebody who smokes, it's like there's no way in hell like that. I mean, like that if you're with a smoker, then maybe you don't care. But like if it's a non-smoker to smoker, they don't that kissing somebody after they've done that, it's not going to be pleasant for you. I mean, it just isn't.
Okay,
I mean,
it isn't. I've definitely gotten Noah to stop smoking cigarettes a long time ago. In fact, way before we even got married. But I don't know how he pulled it off. He's the only person I know that has smoked that didn't have a gross mouth. Because that is a thing, FYI. Two, now you got the smokers that have the douche flutes. Is what we call them. Which is the e-cigarettes, if you will.
Oh yeah,
they're flavored. Definitely no gross mouth, but I feel like it is so dangerous. I feel like those are so dangerous. They allow you to smoke nonstop and not even think about it. You know.
I just see people like, I mean, I was watching a stream earlier with somebody and on YouTube, and the guy was hitting it like every 4 seconds. I feel like, and I'm just like, I don't know how that's healthier. I mean, you know,
it's not.
There's chemicals in there that's still propelling that. So, I mean, you're breathing them in more than you are if you were, I mean, unless you're a chain smoker. I have seen that too, where somebody literally won't even let the one burn down.
They're lighting up the other one with it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, anyways.
Rosalind Cash was uneasy before her love scene with Charlton Heston, saying it feels strange to screw Moses.
Oh, okay. She has a point. That's hella funny. Like, you were Moses.
Whoopi Goldberg, as batshit insane as she is, has remarked that this kiss between the characters played by Charlton Heston and Rosalind Cash was one of the first interracial kisses to appear in a movie, which is what I said earlier.
Yeah.
So,
good on them.
The production company wanted a locale that looked like an abandoned metropolitan area, but it was too costly to build. The producer drove through downtown LA one weekend and discovered there were no shoppers, so the majority of the film's exteriors were shot there on weekends.
Wait, what?
Just like you said, they literally drove into LA and said, this place looks abandoned. Let's just film here.
Yeah,
Even back in the 70s.
Downtown Los Angeles is wild. Back during COVID, and this is funny because this is one of the times where we had to go, but we also had to wear our masks in our car. We went to a Stranger Things. It was a drive-through experience. It was so dumb. We'll just leave it at that. But anyways, it was at like an abandoned parking garage. Which I'm like, did they even have to pay anyone to like put this up there? I'm sure they're making money. It was a huge production company, so I'm sure they did. But yeah, that when I was driving to this area, I'm like, where the fuck are we? You ever seen National Lampoon's Vacation where he's driving through the ghetto and they're stealing his hubcaps? That's what I thought was going to happen.
I think that every time I drive through a city, but that's just me where I live in the country, but you know.
That's hella funny.
The facade set used for Neville's fortress home still stands relatively unchanged on Warner Brothers Ranch Park Boulevard, formerly Columbia Ranch in Burbank. It can easily be seen using Google Maps 3D.
Wow.
The facade faces east-southeast, so I mean you can still see Neville's house on there.
Okay.
Charlton Heston had read the original novel on an airplane coming back to Los Angeles and was very interested in a modern adaptation of the book. He was totally unaware that the film had already been made into, or that the book had already been made into a film years before as Last Man on Earth starring Vincent Price.
So he sure did no
homework on that.
Mm-hmm. I bet. I've never heard of that film. You fucking liar.
The 8-track that Neville plays in his car in the opening sequence is clearly Sinatra's Strangers in the Night, but presumably due to licensing issues, an instrumental version of A Summer Place is used on the soundtrack instead. Okay. So there's your music. Richard Matheson said that the Omega Man was so removed from this book that it didn't bother him. The one that's the farthest away from his fucking book, and he's just like, well, it doesn't even resemble it, so I don't fucking care about that one.
Yeah, and it's not called. Well, the book's called. Not the book. The movie that we're thinking of is I Am Legend. So
yeah,
he.
I kind of get it. I mean, he can't be mad at this one because it's like it's so far out there, it doesn't even resemble it. So it's not like they attacked his baby like he felt like the first one.
Did they mention his name in anything though? Like, did they say based off the story? You know,
I don't think they did.
Okay, well then I wouldn't be mad because they're not using it.
They had to give him credits because it's based upon his book, but I think that's all they did was give him, whatever production credits for that.
Okay.
Charlton Heston had approached Orson Welles to direct this. That would have been an interesting movie to watch.
Yeah.
Touch of Evil was Orson Welles movie that, starred both of them in the movie. In the film, the plague that causes the end of the world was unleashed by germ warfare as a result of the border war between China and Russia. In fact, China and Russia had some very serious border skirmishes during 1969 that had many of the world leaders concerned about the possibility of all-out war between the communist superpowers. So this was actually a real thing that was happening at the time, was the two of them fighting.
Okay.
And now they're joined together and scaring the shit out of people in a different way. I don't think we can be happy with the relationship between China and Russia no matter what they do. So whatever. Tim Burton has said that this is one of his favorite films, and the one film that he would bring with him if he were stranded on a desert island. He later worked with Heston on a remake of Planet of the Apes. Okay. I think Heston played one of the apes in the new version that Tim Burton did. I don't like Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. I think it's one of his worst movies, and I love the original Planet of the Apes, and I actually like the new series that they came out with, but Burton's is dog shit. I mean, it's really bad to me, at least.
Which is funny that this would be the movie that he chose because he's also worked with Vincent Price, and it's motherfucking Vincent Price.
Yeah, Vincent Price was actually the voice. He was in Edward Scissorhands. Yes. He was the creator.
Which that took me a minute to realize. I was like, he looks like that guy from Edward Scissorhands. He was the voice over for I want to say that it was Victor or some kind of other name like that. It was a little short film that Burton did way before he ever did any of his other movies. It's like a little drawing thing that he did. Frankenweenie?
No, it was before Frankenweenie. It was actually on the disc for Frankenweenie. It's like a hand-drawn thing where this kid is basically super goth,
Okay.
And he dreams that he's like Edgar Allan Poe, and it's narrated by Vincent Price, I believe.
How do you get that? That is insane. Like I can understand Michael Jackson getting Vincent Price to do Thriller.
Yeah.
But Tim Burton wasn't big back then.
No, it was before he broke out and become big. It was kind of surprising that he had that on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Burton was attracted to anybody of any kind of goth likes. Like I feel like Tim Burton would like me. I feel like he'd like me. Probably like my daughter better, but not me as and not like in sexually or anything. I mean,
that's with him though. I wouldn't put it past him either. I mean, he's clearly
all right
of a type.
Keep Tim Burton away from my daughter.
look at all the people that Tim Burton has dated. I mean, I'm super jealous of the guy. I mean, he's been with some of the hot goths. I'll just put it that way.
Well, were some of them goths before they even got with him? Because I feel like
they were borderline, and then they went full on, and then got super hot whenever they were with him, and then after that, they kind of like brightened back up a little bit, and then whatever. But he the one that kind of didn't fit the mold whatsoever that got super goth with him, but was not whatsoever before, was that Lisa Marie, the one that was in
the hot alien.
Mom. Well, she was also the hot alien, but she was the mom in Sleepy Hollow.
Oh yeah,
she was the odd one out because Helena Bonham Carter and Eva Green were both like very close to goth before they ever got with him, and then went full on whenever they were with him. So
yeah, they definitely were. At minimum, they were emo.
Yeah.
And then they went full goth. Lisa Marie, though, I think he fucked up with that one. She's still super hot.
She was too hot for him, though. I don't know how that relationship even worked, which I will say that actually Eva Green probably was too. But I mean, and Helena, I don't know. I could see her like being attracted to him, like how creative he is, but he's a goofy looking guy. He's not. I don't know what these ladies saw in him other than the fact that his creativity or whatever.
Yeah.
2 scenes were deleted prior to the theatrical release of the film. A scene in which Lisa, Rosalind Cash, visits the graveside of her parents and hears crying coming from a nearby crypt. Entering the crypt, she finds a female member of the family holding her stillborn baby, armed with a machine gun. Lisa considers killing the mother, but turns and leaves. In another deleted scene immediately following, she tells Neville Charlton Heston about that incident, whereupon he asks if she took care of her, and Lisa tells Neville she couldn't do it as she reveals she is pregnant with his child.
Jesus.
That actually says a lot about Neville, too. It's just like, well, did you take care of the bitch? It's like, I mean, he has no chill in this movie.
Did you handle it?
Another deleted scene features the little girl who brings flowers and apples in a bag to Neville's apartment garden and prays for him to protect her and not let the devil take her soul. Again, playing into the Christ-like, aspect of Neville in this movie. The film takes place in August of 1977. Again, it's in the future from whenever the movie's actually been released. If you want a post-apocalyptic movie to hit just a little bit harder, just set it a few years out from the time, and people are like, oh shit, that could really happen. The scene in which Heston's character watches Woodstock inspired Joel Hodgson to create Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh shit.
So, and I love that. I love Mystery Science
Theater 3000. Oh my god, obviously.
So, but literally him sitting in the theater and like kind of mimicking the movie is what gave that guy the idea to do that.
Dude, that's cool. That's hella awesome.
The opening credits uses a font called Ravenscroft, presumably named after Thurl Ravenscroft, used for the sign of the Haunted Mansion attraction at Disney Park in California. So this movie uses the same font as the Haunted Mansion.
What the hell? Well, I'm surprised they didn't call it. What is that one movie we saw where they said it's called Horror Font or something? That's not the name of it, but I was dying that they said that that's what it was called.
I don't remember at this point. Do you remember what the movie was even about?
No, I just remember just rolling my eyes because you said every actor was obsessed with the font, and I'm like, I have never heard of that. We're obsessed with the font of this opening of this film.
Neville almost dies in a helicopter crash. Ironically, and this is kind of sad, the director of this movie, Boris Segal, was actually killed during the production of a miniseries World War III, where he walked into the tail rotor blades of a helicopter.
Holy shit.
So the director of this movie walked into the tail rotor blades of a helicopter later, or just a few years after this. Kind of weird. Heston encountered a similar odd behaving cult a year earlier in Beneath the Planet of the Apes from 1970. Which is it really is close too, because I remember that movie, they're the cult in that movie where they've lived underground. They're very pale, just like they are in this movie. They got the robes. I guarantee you that if George Lucas didn't steal from Matthias in this movie, he stole from Beneath the Planet of the Apes, because where it's a sci-fi movie about, otherworldly, or the apes being like man-like creatures or whatever.
Yeah.
He took from one of these two movies. The plot line of people dropping dead from a super pathogen will be further explored by horror author Stephen King and his mega novel The Stand, which was written in 1978. Makes me wonder if Stephen King watched this and was just like, bingo.
Yeah, you read my mind completely, because I was it's immediately when I heard that in 1978, I was like, oh, somebody's copying.
To be honest, though, The Stand is phenomenal. It's probably one of the best works of fiction that I think anybody in the 20th century wrote.
And this is coked up Stephen King, right?
He wasn't as bad. He hadn't quite got to the levels of cokedom that he did in the 80s.
Okay.
I mean, he was probably on pot pretty heavy.
Okay, that's fine. Which I don't know how you could be creative on pot. I feel like that shit makes you. I don't know.
I don't either. But I mean, people find ways to make it work.
Okay.
Somehow.
I mean, I'm not even upset at them.
A TV miniseries followed in 1994, but the seminal work that inspired it was Stephen King's short story called Night Surf, which was first published in 1969. So technically, he had the kernel of the idea for the super flu, because I've read that short story, and he mentions Captain Trips in it, which is what he later calls the disease in The Stand. So they are linked, and he did write this before this movie came out, but he probably watched this movie and was like, okay, I really need to make a whole fucking novel over this.
We need to make this a thing.
Yeah. The department store scene with a live person appearing was seen again in Stephen King's novel The Stand, and it's actually in the miniseries too. They're in I think it's character Nick Andros is because he's kind of, I think he's deaf in the movie. He definitely can't speak, and he happens to see movement amongst these a bunch of mannequins that are all positioned inside of a store or whatever, and he kind of falls after the person. Almost makes me wonder if Stephen King took that scene from this movie and put it in The Stand.
As we have come to find out, anything is possible.
This was the second film that Charlton Heston and Anthony Zerbe starred in together. They starred in a Western called Will Penny before this. Heston was an avowed political conservative and war hawk in his personal life. It would have been extremely galling for him to have to watch and memorize lines from the Woodstock film with its promotion of hippie ideals, drugs, and anti-Vietnam stance. That's why I find that scene so humorous, because I know in real life he would have hated the fuck out of that.
Hated it, but you know what? I mean, you're an actor and you're getting paid to do something, so do it.
Yeah. At the end of this movie, Charlton Heston's character dies the same way he did in another movie, Khartoum, from 1966. His body stabbed by a lance.
Damn.
The final shot of Charlton Heston dead in the fountain is meant to be reminiscent of Christ on the cross.
Amen.
And they deliberately made it look that way. This movie, definitely not my favorite adaptation. It strays quite a bit. But as a movie, it's my second favorite of this lot, because it's just fun.
Yeah.
It's just fun to watch.
It is. I mean, it definitely has that, it's got humor in it.
Yeah, he's cracking jokes and sarcastic through most of the movie.
It's you have to appreciate that, because as we have mentioned, dark humor is how you're going to get yourself through these times.
Yeah. The way that he interacts with the corpse in the dealership is I mean, if you're going to survive this mentally, you've got to have that dark sense of humor. You're going to crack. That's all there is to it.
I can't imagine, and I don't want to imagine, but that's, what would be hard is if we had to go through these times, if there was no internet, which ironically the movie that some of us had been watching recently, Leave the World Behind, there was still, there was no internet. Not being able to contact the Scooby Gang to be like, guys, I'm alive, but I'm dying on the inside,
Yeah, if you didn't have anybody to talk to, that would for sure be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, even if I had the family, I'd still want to be like, God, I wonder what the Scooby Gang is doing,
Well, I mean, yeah, you human beings are social creatures. I mean, we are. Even if you're an introvert, you need somebody every once in a while just to be to get that lonely feeling. I mean, now introverts don't need much, but they need something, every once in a while. Extroverts, I don't know how they would survive in this situation. They'd probably kill themselves in the first few days, because if they couldn't find somebody else to talk to, they would be just like, what's the fucking point? Get me the rope or whatever, and I'm gone. You know?
Now, when you say introvert, you're talking about a real introvert, not these people that are like, sorry guys, I'm introverted. I'm gonna go now. I just can't. You know, it's like, shut up. And then they're on social media posting all their business. You know, it's like,
yeah,
you're not an introvert, and you don't have some kind of weird postpartum or post-traumatic anything. Calm down.
Yeah. I think people. I don't know that I've ever met anybody who is fully one. Well, I mean, I have met some extreme extroverts. I can't really say that. Introverts, I don't know. I've only met like a couple of people in my life that were like, I would say, were extreme introverts. Most people do want to get out and socialize at least a little bit. Now, their social batteries might wear out super quick, but they do like to get out and talk to other people every once in a while, you know?
Yeah.
And this situation would suck. I mean, it just would been not having anybody to interact with. But he's got a little bit easier in this movie. Neville in this movie's got it easier than Vincent Price did in the first movie, because Vincent Price, I mean, had one ghoul who could even say anything halfway to him for most of the movie, and the rest of them were just like mindless zombies going around. Matthias could carry on the whole fucking conversations.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just like you said, there's no reason why the two of these guys couldn't talk to each other. I mean, you know,
you can't hash it out. And like Matthias wasn't even being violent towards him. I know eventually it was going to turn to that, but he was sitting there having a calm, collected conversation with him. And it's like, you guys should do this for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think they would be. I mean, so I feel like Charlton Heston's character had a little bit easier in a sense, just because like the ghouls that were coming after him, like they were smarter and they could have done worse things, but they didn't deliberately because they were trying to be better than him. And I mean, they were very, very well spoken too. So there's no reason why he couldn't have like carried, or at least attempted to like come to some kind of understanding with them. But,
yeah.
But this movie's just batshit. I mean, you got to go into it knowing that. I mean, it doesn't try to, I mean, like, The Last Man on Earth has like the loneliness and like all that stuff going on. This movie's just like balls to the wall, like guns blazing, 54 or however old he was, year old Charlton Heston, shirtless, showing his suntan body to the world as he's getting ready to bed a young black woman. I mean, it's excess to the extreme. So that's what it is.
She was beige.
Yeah, well, I mean, she wasn't. She was half his age. I mean, but she was still of age.
Well, no. The color of her skin, she was beige.
Oh, I thought you said she was of age.
Yeah, like they're like, we're gonna put a black woman and a white man on screen together, and they're gonna kiss. But before we go full black, we're gonna go halvesies first. So they went with beige.
It doesn't have. I mean, it's got more humor to it than the next movie we'll discuss.
Definitely.
For sure. Anything else you want to say about it before we end this one?
No, just the simple fact that these are two older films that I actually did like, and you're rarely going to get that out of me from this. And don't come at me about it, because I'm allowed to like and dislike what I do. And the Reverend is introducing me to a lot of films, which actually, ironically goes into the whole, I don't add a lot to this podcast. That's not my job. That's the Reverend's job. I'm here for entertainment at best, if I even provide that. And just to kind of shoot the shit back and forth, because if the world's ending, we're going to make a podcast talking about what's happening, and we're all going to have different opinions about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did like these movies. So
I'm happy that you did. I didn't expect, I mean, I didn't expect you to exactly jump for joy, because I know, I mean, older movies are kind of hard to get into for some people. They just are. I mean, they had a different way of acting. Like, I mean, especially the farther back you get. I mean, when you discuss like White Zombie, they were like very close to stage acting, where they were very like dramatic with their hand movements and all that, because they didn't realize that, well, you've got audio now. You can actually use your voice to carry a lot. You know, they were just getting the first start of that, and you know, these movies totally different. I mean, like the 50s and 60s and 70s, totally different. Like, you know, just culture behind, you know, what was going on in the movies too. So
totally.
I don't feel like we get anywhere close to like modern style movies until the 80s. Really,
it was a pleasant
late
surprise.
70s maybe.
Yeah,
but
seeing these movies and liking them was a pleasant surprise. Like Omega Man lost me a tiny bit. I know my husband loves that film, but it lost me a little bit. But even then, I wouldn't say that I didn't enjoy it. I still wanted to know what was going to happen. So I color me surprised is all I'm going to say.
we'll see how you fare on the next one with I Am Legend. But anyways, folks, with that, peace be with you.
And with your spirit.
Crawl out through the fallout, baby, when they drop that bomb. Crawl out through the fallout with the greatest of aplomb. When your white count's getting higher, hurry, don't delay. I'll hold you close and kiss those radiation burns away. Crawl out through the fallout, baby, to my loving arms. Through the rain of strontium 90. Think about your hero when you're at ground zero, and crawl out through the fallout back to me. Crawl out through the fallout, baby, you know what I mean. Crawl out through the fallout, 'cause they said this bomb was clean. If you cannot find the way, just listen for my song. I'll love you all your life, although that may not be too long. Crawl out through the fallout, baby, to my loving arms, while those ICBMs keep us free. When you hear me call out, baby, kick the wall out and crawl out through the fallout back to me. 'Cause you'll be the only girl in the world